Hey, Chris from Spotlight Energy Solutions here. I just wanted to give you this quick video to give you the rundown on how the installation process typically works, how we might be able to get you a price. Just to things off here, I just wanted to start off by saying if you haven't done so, definitely visit the SPAN website. I believe the website is span.io to give you like a very high level introduction on what kind of features you have available, gives you a little bit more in-depth instruction on how it typically works. Also, I definitely recommend download the Span Home app on your smartphone. When you go to the first page of that, after you download it, at the very bottom, there will be a little button that says you can access demo mode. Super helpful and intuitive to be able to see how it typically works in the palm of your hand and how you can utilize it in a real world application. So I definitely recommend checking those two things out. But I just wanted to also touch on kind of a little bit about the product itself, right? So this is actually an example picture of a previous client we had installed for. This panel is actually in his basement, surface mounted on his concrete wall in his basement. There was no sheetrock involved here. Typically, we like to do that clean little flush mount in the recessed in the sheetrock look to make it a clean finish. But in this case, this isn't really applicable because there's no sheetrock surrounding this specific product. Now, a couple things I wanted to point out about the product itself that like separates it from like a traditional electrical panel. So the Span is a computer, but also a panel, right? Which means there's a lot more components within it, makes it heavier, it makes it bulkier. So from a very, from a very look and feel, it's just harder to install to begin with, right? It requires two men to mount this thing. It's actually a pretty heavy appliance or a piece of technology. The other thing I wanted to point out was this this big box above the Span panel. Not always required. It's called a troughing system. It's not always required, but it's really used depending on how many circuits you have that are coming into that panel. Again, it's a computer plus a panel, so there's limited space on how many circuits you can bring through this thing. And typically, when there's a lot of circuits involved, sometimes this troughing system helps to make it just an easier application from an installation standpoint. Again, not always required, but I just like to point that out as well. That's just potentially an added step that we have to do here involved in this specific project. All right. Now, features-wise, again, we can table another conversation to talk about the features, but just some things that I love about the Span is just the insights that you can get. It can tell you which circuits are down, which circuits have a problem, how much energy is being consumed per circuit. Not to mention you have load shedding capabilities. There's some features relating to solar and battery storage where you can use the energy you're harnessing very effectively and efficiently, where you can dedicate that power to the circuits you want it to go to in the event of an outage. Again, we can have a whole other conversation on the features. Now, I always like to address this. Are we going to be doing a Span upgrade or a Span replacement, right? Those are two separate things that I like to address. What we want to start off by addressing is how many current amps do you have into your home, right? What is your current main panel at amperage-wise? Now, in a standard residential setting, we do see typically 100, 150, or 200 amps. 200 amps is the max standard residential panel that we see, and that's what we want to try to get for you at this point. If you have 200 amps already, great. We're going to fall in that category of just a replacement, which is basically just taking this panel off, putting the Span panel in, right? Now, if you have a 100 or a 150, we need to do what's called an upgrade to 200 amps. Now, what's required with that is not only do we need to replace the panel itself, but there are all these other components from the utility connection, right? You have your service head, the service entrance cable, the meter itself, and then the kick, the service entrance into the back of the panel itself. All of that needs to be replaced to meet a 200 amp sized requirement, right? So if we're going from 100 or 150, we need to replace this entire component or this entire system, okay? Which obviously is more complex, more labor, more material involved, right? So that's where we always start as well. Now, what variables determine the install pricing for this Span, right? The first thing is again, as I mentioned, it is a heavier and bulkier, product than traditional electrical panels, so it just requires more labor power, right? Secondly, do we need a custom troughing system, that big box that I mentioned above? Like I said, we don't always need it, but with people who have a ton of circuits or where there's limited room as far as like the size of the wires coming in, we might need that troughing system. That is a little bit of an extra step, extra material, extra labor. Thirdly, are we upgrading or are we just replacing, right? There's a big difference in pricing or complexity there as well. Fourthly, are we combining circuits from subpanels, right? Sometimes you have secondary subpanels next to your main. Most people want those circuits within those panels to be smart as well. So we want to combine those into the main panel. Are we doing that, right? There's obviously just additional circuits beyond just the main panel that we need to consider as well. Fifthly, are we tying that span panel into an existing solar system, battery storage, EV charging, standby generator, etc., right? Obviously, there's more logistics, more low volt wiring and communications we need to run surrounding that as well, which makes it a more complex installation also. Okay. Now, there's 4 parts to a typical span installation, right, that I like to just kind of set you up for. The first thing we always do is a free price assessment, right? Okay, what is this going to take to get this done, right, based off of your requirements of your home, okay? Usually we'll start off in a virtual fashion where you can get us some initial images to be able to kick that off. I'll go over how we do that in a second. And then typically that leads into a more a first visit, or kind of like a free visit to kind of look at things. But most of the time we gather most of what we need in this first step, right? Second step is basically 2, 3, and 4 are going to be outlined in the price we deliver to you, right? Now, visit 1 is going to be in a paid engagement, right? Our first visit to your home is going to be for basically what we call kind of our setup, right? Now, the first thing we do is we're sending 2 guys to your house, and we do a whole house circuit trace out. We go through your house, we pin plug every single circuit, and we test it. And we indicate which circuits are in fact controlling those circuits, right? We label it precisely. Now, the reason why that's important is because the beauty of the span panel to begin with is to indicate what you're controlling in the palm of your hand. If that's not accurate, there's no point of the span panel, right? The second thing we do is we take custom measurements surrounding that panel. We're going to determine if there's a trough required. If there is, we'll take those measurements. We could even start building out that troughing system at that point. But we do take full measurements to make sure everything is cut and dry, right? Now, third thing, visit 2 is also paid, and that will be indicated in your price. This is the actual execution of the span panel installation itself. We'll do whether it's the replacement or the upgrade that's needed, we will do this in this second visit. You will be without power for a certain decent period of the day. Usually, depending on how many crews we can dedicate to the installation, it's an intraday installation. Sometimes there's a need to go back if we're tying in battery storage or EV chargers, stuff like that. That could be a second day type visit, but that's all custom to the specific situation. Fourth thing that's going to be outlined in your price is an office-based labor. The span commissioning process, right? Once we land all of your circuits into the new span panel, we energize the span panel. We take that map of all of the circuits and where they are placed in your panel. We bring that back to the office. It's about a 2 to 3 hour span commissioning process for our office staff here in our office to actually map that layout within the software backend for span. Once we do that, we send you the homeowner app for download. You have a specific link. You download your homeowner app. You open it up on your phone, and your entire span and the layout we've done for you is actually in the palm of your hand and ready to use. Okay. At this point in the commissioning process, we'll also determine, what other systems we're tying in, whether battery storage is in the mix, solar. What's the manufacturer of your solar? What's the manufacturer of your battery storage? What kind of EV charger are you tying in? Stuff like that. Okay. So we do that entire commissioning on the back end, and that's included in your price when you see it as well. All right, so what's involved with getting started, right? So typically we always start every single one of our span customers out in a virtual fashion, right? If you have 5 to 10 minutes, we always love to start you off with our span upload tool. What that's going to be is a link that you're going to click actually below this video, or you can request it separately. We'll send it to you directly. But if you go below this video, you can start that span upload tool process through a quick button. What that's going to take you to is about 8 to 10 steps. And each step is going to show you an example of a picture that we need you to provide into that step of the form from your home, right? So you'll start at your current electrical panel. You'll take some pictures there. You'll take a couple of pictures of the current battery storage system that you have, etc. Right? So it's very intuitive. You just follow what you see, upload what you see. Once you submit that form, it gets automatically dropped to my estimate team's inbox, and we'll review those images, right? Most of the time, it's pretty cut and dry of what we need to see to price this. But if there's a need for a potential on-site visit, we will send a technician by to take some things a little bit further if some things are a little bit blurry or a little bit confusing to us. But most of the time it's straightforward. Our span upload tool is very intuitive, very straightforward, gives us exactly what we need. So again, the third step is we'll either make a quick visit to you, or we have most of what we need to just send you a quick price. Your price is what your price is. When we send it to you, nothing really changes unless you change the scope on us on the back end. Okay. So thank you for watching. We're looking forward to handling the span panel upgrade or replacement for you. Feel free to click that button below to get started on that span upload tool, and we'll see you on the other side. Thanks so much.